Okay, so what I want to cover here is using our detail line tools. Now, I briefly touched on it when we were covering the site analysis and working on, not the roof plan, doing the building outline. When creating this, we jumped straight into the annotate and I clicked on the detail line, and that's how we ended up creating this. But what I really want to do in this tutorial is spend some time with some of these commands because they're very, very practical and useful. Up until now, we've been using Revit as a three-dimensional modeling software. Everything we wanted to add has pretty much been either by making our own families, pre-built components, through using walls, doors, windows, stairs, roofs, all of these three-dimensional elements. However, when we get to the really kind of detailed elements or the really detailed stuff that go into a drawing set or into a building, you can imagine it might be somewhat um, tedious to have to model every little element out, okay? And to have to model every little thing that we wanted to would take a very long time, which is why we really haven't gotten into a whole lot of detail within the model. Now, that's not to say that Revit doesn't have that capability. It does, but sometimes it's just easier to draw it two-dimensionally than it would be to model it out three-dimensionally, create a family, create a profile, extrusions, things like that. So instead, we will use the detail line, okay, or our detail tools. So detail lines and our tools exist only in two dimensions, meaning they will only show up as a two-dimensional drawing, either on any of our drawings that we have here, okay? But when we go to a 3D view, you will not see that line work, okay? Let's go ahead and turn off the sun path. Okay, so detail lines is a really good way of kind of cheating or adding detail without having to go through the nuances of building something, building it all out. Now, this is important because if you kind of take a step back and you think of what it is we do as architects or as designers is we make drawings of buildings or we make drawings of our design. Very rarely will we actually submit a model to a client or to a contractor. It's always drawing. So sometimes that's where the benefit of doing the detail line will come into play as well. So really quickly, just a quick rundown. We could use our detail line to draw on our drawing. So if I click on detail lines, we get our draw tools and we get our line styles. Okay. I could use the line. We could select the thickness of our line. We could use a thin line, a medium line, just a general line. We have different line types, wide lines. Okay. And let's say I wanted to draw out a concrete pad over here on the left-hand side. And I'd say, we're going to do this concrete pad. This is going to come out 5 feet, and then it's going to come up. And actually, it's going to align to my driveway. Let's go ahead and bring this down. We'll move this. Actually, what I'll do is I'll draw another line that comes straight out, just like that. I'll use my trim extents. And now we have on drawing, we have something that represents a drawing pad or a kind of a walkway on the outside. Okay. So in a really brief example, that's what the detail line allows us to do. But we could do more than that. So let's do an actual detail. Okay. It's also really good to add any additional two-dimensional objects that you want in here that you don't really necessarily want to model out. But let's go to a section. So I'm going to go to, let's just go to one of my building sections. Okay, So let's say I really wanted to show the insulation. I want to show the framing. Um, I want to show the framing inside the walls or inside the floor. Well, I could use my detail light for that as well, right? So if I wanted to draw, let's say, the floor joist, right over here, I can draw this line just like that. I can select this line and then specify the temporary dimension. Let's bring this over. Oh, of course it doesn't want to come over. So let's bring this, there we go, right there. And let's make this 0, 1, and 1/2, which represents a 2 by. So this is probably a 2 by 10. If I wanted to, I can also just draw another line to show whenever we have whenever we have any framing, we'll represent a joist with an X, representing that we're cutting it through. Now I can continue on and begin to kind of explore some of the rectangle tools and, create it that way as well. So that becomes a little bit faster. However, we also have components. Now, the component in the details tab is different than the component in our architecture tab. It's the same concept where it's kind of this folder of goodies that we can choose from. But when it comes to the detail line components, they are components that are pre-drawn. They're two-dimensionally drawn drawings of certain details that we might want. So we don't have to draw it every single time. For example, like a 2x4 or a 2x10. So if I click on component, I could go into load family. Let me back up here. And it takes us into the families folder, right? This is where we go get our doors, our windows. We've got lighting in here, casework, and so on. We have a folder in here called detail items. So we can double click in there. And we have all types of pre-drawn details pertaining to certain categories. I'm going to go into wood and plastics. And we have wood framing, and that's what I want to look for. Now, there's not nearly enough time to go into every single folder and explain what every single drawing is. So, but I do recommend that you go in there and just kind of click around, see what's available. Okay. We're going to go into wood framing, and then we have nominal, and then we have rough cut. So they're essentially the same thing. It's just how do you refer to your framing? Do we refer to a stud as a 2x4 or a 1.5 by 3.5? Okay. Nominal means that it's the name that we give the framing object. So we typically will say that a stud is 2x4. So by referring to it as a 2x4, that means that we're referring to it as a nominal term. However, if I want to be able to be very specific, or if I want to say, no, this is a 1.5 by 3.5 wood stud, then I would select the rough. Okay. So it really has to do more with just the terminology, but it's essentially the same thing. So we're going to go to nominal. I'll hit open. And then from here, I can go ahead and select which ones I want to load in. I can, if I wanted to, select the top one and come all the way down, hold the shift key and click on the bottom one here. Notice I'm clicking right on under the type. Could bring this out too. And I could load all of them in. But again, you really only want to load the ones that you're going to need because the more objects, more things you keep loading into your software or into your file, the heavier the file begins to get. Okay. So I'm going to load a 2x4. Let's hold down the control key. I want to do a 2x6, a 2x8, a 2x10, and a 2x12. I don't think we have anything that's going to require a 2x12, but let's just load it in just to be safe. And then I'll hit OK. And in the properties box, we have our 2x as a nominal cut. We also have some other things that these other components that were loaded in before as well. But this right here, I believe is a 2 by 10. And I'm saying it's a 2 by 10 because when we created that floor, I'm not sure if you remember, it said I believe it says like a 2 by 10 wood flooring. So let's click on 2 by 10, and sure enough, there it is. So then I could go ahead and select and click and place it right there. Now I can also click on this. If you remember, let's kind of bring this closer, bring this temporary dimension closer there. If you remember from one of the very first lectures when we were covering flooring, I mentioned that the studs or the framing are 16 inches apart. So I'll go ahead and move this, and this really should be from this side, right? So I'll type in 16 inches. There we go. Now this is a two-dimensional object again. So it does not exist in the actual 3D model. And I can continue this. Let's copy this over another 16 inches. And you can keep doing that and adding it to your section. Let's go ahead, since it's so easy now, let's go to component. Let's add the base plate down there. So that's a 2 by 6. Now the problem is that it comes in vertically. So let's hit the space bar and it'll begin to rotate, and I could place that right there. And let's add the top plate since we have it right here. I'll place it right there. Now notice it should go higher up, but because of the placement where it's being placed with my cursor, it's at the bottom right corner. I'm just going to place it kind of aligned where it needs to be. Then I'll come back and I'll move it using my move tool, MV, and then copy it, CO, and place it right there. Okay. And just like that, I'm able to begin to add the structural details that I need in my section drawing without having to actually go into my flooring material and actually model out all of the framing. Okay. So definitely explore components. Now, the other thing that is one of the most kind of life-saving, time-saving um, attributes in Revit, and this really goes to anyone in AutoCAD who has used AutoCAD, the painstaking act of drawing insulation, right? In Revit, it already comes pre-made for us. So I can click on insulation, and all I have to do is specify the width of my insulation. So I can specify 5.5 inches, which is the thickness of my wall here. I'll hit apply and I'll go from the center. Look at that. That's great. I could specify this to, it's going to be 9, should be 9.25, the spacing in between here. There we go. And I can draw the insulation just like that. So just with these components and the insulation tools, we can add, or we could draw two-dimensionally these drawings or these little information that would have taken a lot longer in a two-dimensional drafting software. Okay. So that's the detail line, the component, and the installation. The last thing I want to cover is the region. So we have two types of regions. We have a filled region, and then we have a masking region. A filled region allows us to add kind of a fill, so like an inside, or it allows us to create a shape and then fill it with the pattern on the inside. The masking region is more like whiteout. Okay, it allows us to erase something if we don't if something is drawn maybe incorrectly or modeled incorrectly, it allows us to kind of just white it out, and then we could go over using our detail line and draw it correctly without having to go into Revit and adjust and fix the model. Okay, so I'm going to start with that filled region. Now let's say, oh, you know what? let me get out of here. I should have cleaned this up before. Yeah, there's my topography. Let me go ahead and cut. Nope, the other way around. Let's go ahead and cut this really quickly. Okay. So let's say I wanted to draw that drawing pad or that concrete pad on the outside, right? The one that I just finished drawing. Okay. Now, granted, this was a bad example because it's pretty quick. It's pretty easy to draw a floor, concrete floor pad, to the point where I'd probably just model out correctly as opposed to drawing it out. But nonetheless, the example's there, right? But let's go to this section. Let's say we wanted to draw this in as well. I can go into my region. And what I'm going to do is click on the pull down. Okay. Now this crosshatch or this region is going to have a concrete, I want it to have a concrete fill on the inside because again, we're cutting through this concrete pad. But notice that I don't have anything here. Okay, so I'm going to have to create a type that has the concrete pad. So it's going to be the same kind of system, the same kind of um, outline as what we've done in the past when it comes to creating new things. We go into edit type, we go into duplicate, and I'm going to call this concrete. I'll hit OK. And we're going to go right here, foreground fill pattern. I'm going to click inside there, click on the three dots, and there's concrete. Okay. I'll hit OK and apply and OK. And then I'll use my rectangle tool. And if I wanted this to be kind of a thicker line, I'd go from thin lines to, let's say, medium lines. And now I will create a shape. Okay. Now use the rectangle, but you could also, here, let's go ahead and, just for the sake of the example, let's create another shape as well. Now this is the shape that's going to get filled in, but we don't actually get to see the fill until we until we finish the sketch mode. So let's hit the check mark. And there is our concrete pad. Now it's being cut because of the crop region. Okay. But if we brought that out, we'd end up seeing more of it. But I'm okay kind of cutting it out. Well, let's leave just a little bit. Oh, well, that's the one downside since I did it at the same time. I can't, they were created at the same time. So by deleting this, I'll end up deleting my concrete pad, which is kind of not what I want. Let's Control Z. Let's keep undoing. There we go. Until we're back in sketch mode, let's go ahead and delete this. And let's hit the check mark there. Okay. What if I wanted to show drywall, right? Or a symbol, or maybe we say that there's wood paneling here. Let's try that out. So let's go into region. Okay. Now we do have wood 1 and wood 2. So let's pick wood 1. Let's go into edit type. If you want to take a look at what that looks like, we'll go into wood 1, and that's what that looks like. You know what, maybe what I'm going to do is select wood 2. So let's cancel. Let's change this to wood 2. Okay. And again, if there's something there that you don't see, if there's something here that you don't see in the properties, we could always go duplicate it, and then there's a lot more options inside here that do not exist in this pull down. So things like sand, the gypsum plaster. So if you want to show drywall, if you want to show that plaster, we could do that as well. But I'm going to go ahead and stick to my wood. Let's go ahead and create a rectangle just like that. I'm going to draw another rectangle because this is going to, I don't want a region to be placed inside there. And then I'm going to use my line tool to kind of cut across or cut around the window frame. Okay, just like that. I'll have to take this line and I'm going to split it. I hope oh, nope, I clicked on the wrong one. That's the one I want. Okay, so now I'll hit trim extents, click there, click that line, click there, and click that line. Okay, so now I have this continuous region in the wood. Let's hit the check mark. And now we have a hatch, a filled hatch. Okay. Now let's say we want to do the masking region. So for that, what if, I don't know, I'm trying to think of something we could hide. Well, actually, you know what? Let's say we wanted to draw a dining table, and I don't want to have to go in and look for a dining table or have to create a family for a dining table. And if I use the detail line, the problem is that I have the flooring, right? I have these individual lines. So if I draw a, should use the rectangle tool. If I draw a rectangle, it's still going to get lost because of the flooring. So instead, what I can do is use a masking region. Let's use the rectangle tool. And this time, we can use, well, let's stick to medium lines. Yeah, let's stick to medium lines. Just so you know, we also have a tab that says invisible line, and that means that there is no border. So we'll explore that last. So let's click on medium line, and let's say I have a dining table like that. Let's go ahead and select this. Let's say it's a 7 foot, which is pretty big. And this is going to be 30 inches. And there we go. We'll hit the check mark. And now it actually looks like I have a dining table, okay? Or at least, you know, that there is an object here that is above the um, flooring material. Okay. Let's see. Lastly, I'm trying to see what we can hide. Um, maybe if we go into, let's go back to our section. I'm not sure. Let's say, here we go. This is perfect. So in this section, we actually show that the floor goes to the other side. And that's the way that that these floors are constructed in Revit, right? We typically want the floors to go all the way to the opposite side of the floor of the wall. That's how we constructed it. And then we went in and we kind of cut an opening out. However, um, this stud here really would be just a full height stud because it's 2 floors. And in this area, we might actually kind of make it one very long, would be like a 16 foot, um, 2x6 or 2x8 stud. And it would not have this portion on the inside. Now, granted, we can go in and if we wanted to just edit the flooring and made it so that it goes around and doesn't cut through the window, through the wall. But we could also use our region. So we could do a masking region. I'll use the rectangle. And I'm going to come across, oops, go ahead and cut across just like that. You know what? I'm going to go right in that area as well. Okay. And then, let's select all of these, hit the tab key so I can select all of them. And we're going to change the line style to invisible. And then I'll hit the check mark. And now it's as if it's invisible. Now we run the problem, we still have that problem because now these lines are not connected. So we could use our detail line, use thin line, and just come and draw over that masking region we just created. And just like that, we're able to fix something um, in the two-dimensional drawing as opposed to have to edit and manipulate that three-dimensionally. Okay. So the detail lines and these detail tools are really good to hide mistakes or add a level of detail faster than it would be to have to model the thing out. Okay. So hopefully with these, hopefully you can get by with these, and this has been helpful for you.